So, all right, Sonny, we have some Big Ten basketball games this weekend. I just want to point out some that maybe people aren't aware of that are going to affect the seeding, maybe some NCAA tournament stuff. I'll point them out. You kind of react to them with me, and we'll go from there. So, first two we need to point out: Wisconsin and Maryland. They both need to win those games. Those are games they should both win. They're at home. Wisconsin is at home against Penn State. Maryland at home against Northwestern. They are right now both in the top four seeds in the Big Ten tournament. However, if they lose, there is an opportunity for Purdue to jump one or both of them and get back into the top four, and they would then be the fifth seed. So a little bit on the line here. Like I said, Wisconsin and Maryland should win those games. Do you have any concern with them in these games, or maybe a little bit of looking ahead too much? Any thoughts on these two games?
More concerned on Maryland. Now, I'm very high on Maryland. I think they're one of the most complete teams I've seen all season long when it comes to the Big Ten. But this is not really necessarily a spot that they're used to being in, especially over the last couple of years. There's plenty of Kevin Willard jokes, but this team itself is really, really good. And I'm very keen on seeing how they handle the pressure of what, as you said, shouldn't be a very high pressure game. They should be able to soundly take care of the Northwestern Wildcats, but there's a lot at stake. Having just to play 3 games is a lot easier than having to play that extra game on Thursday. So Maryland is the one team I have an eye on because, again, I have them as one of the sleeper contenders for the Final Four out of the Big Ten. I respect them that much, but I want to see them take care of business against a team like Northwestern and make it look like it was business. And just because I want to see if they can mature and grow into this role, because I've never seen them in this position before.
Yeah, and I was looking up while you were talking there. Philip is right. Northwestern, they did beat Maryland earlier this year. Northwestern's been a pretty, they've been one of those teams this year that can kind of be really dangerous and defeat some teams that look much better than them. And, Willard, we've questioned him enough on this channel. I think that he's answered a good amount of those questions this season, at least with putting the roster together. I think that he's figured that out. There's still some stuff in game that I'm like, I don't know. Maybe could have been better there, but overall, Willard has put together at the very least a very good starting lineup. That's my big thing with Maryland. Are they going to be able to make it to the Final Four with pretty much just 5-6 players? Like, it's basically those 5 guys and Jordan Geronimo, if you can get some other stuff.
Illinois is doing the same thing at this point. Illinois is only playing 6-7 guys at this point.
Yeah, but I think they can go deeper if they need to, right? Like, you can play Jake Davis, you can play Ben Hummerkaus. Like, those guys are options too. In fact, sometimes I like the Ben Hummerkaus at the 5 lineup better than I like Ivisic in there, just with the spacing that he provides. So, but at the end of the day, obviously, Ivisic is better. All right, so and Philip points the other one out that I was going to bring up next. He says, we're all USC fans tomorrow. Yeah, Illinois fans will be rooting for USC hard. Now, it is at UCLA, so this is another one where it's at the team that needs to win. Looks like a good situation, but Sonny, this is March. We've seen crazier things happen in March for sure. The significance here is that if UCLA loses, this means that Illinois would have not the head-to-head, but they would have there's some kind of wins or whatever. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head. I know that it would make Illinois
Philip
the
knows.
6th seed.
Philip, let us know.
Philip knows. It would make Illinois the 6th seed. Is there any significance here for Illinois to move up from the 7th to the 6th seed, or what are your thoughts here?
No, I've been very open and honest about this on Locked On Illini. It's one of those where Illinois has hit 20 wins now this season. Right? One of the 4 programs in the last 6 years to hit 20 plus wins. So once we got that victory over Purdue, and it's the type of victory I think this team needed to have, not just a comfortable 20 plus point victory, but a grinded out type of game. Right now, the Big Ten tournament, I'm just kind of hoping that we can use the time to rest up, get healthy. Illinois won the Big Ten tournament. I just watched them do it last year. Right now, it doesn't really matter to me. There's certain matchups I'd like to avoid. I don't want to play Maryland. Maryland really matches up really well against Illinois, but I'm not putting too much weight on it. If I know other people are, and that's fine, but me, not so much.
Yeah. John does bring up a good point here because we need to find one. He said, "Who's the new person we can joke on in the conference since Willard is winning?" Yeah, I mean, come on, we got to find a new coach here at the Big Ten Huddle that we kind of joke with every now and then. We found our football one, and that is Mike Loxley. It was not intentionally to do that against Maryland, so it just so happens it was both of their coaches. But yeah, we'll have to find a new one there, John. We're taking requests now, so let us know if you have one. Sonny, two other ones, and then there's obviously Michigan State. That's a big
Mhm.
one for the rivalry and everything else. I mean, it doesn't really affect seeding or standings all that much, but it is a big game for at least the rivalry. The other big one, Iowa, Nebraska. Nebraska really needs this win in order to stay in the hunt. If Iowa wins, though, there is the possibility they could make the Big Ten tournament. I believe I need to run the numbers for that really fast, but Iowa there, and then Ohio State, Indiana. Ohio State just got off that double overtime game against Nebraska, where you would say the refs won more than Ohio State in that one if you spend too much time on Twitter, which is fine. The refs did stink in that game, and I said it. But you know what? It is what it is. You got to win the game. Ohio State is traveling to Assembly Hall. Indiana's kind of found themselves here at the end. Ohio State becoming a scrappy team who can shoot really well. Any thoughts on Ohio State, Indiana, and Iowa, Nebraska?
I let me start off with Iowa. This could very well be Fran McCaffrey's last game. So in that sense, it is something to watch. Jared, I don't know if you remember. I think it was the last time I was on this show, the Big Ten Huddle. We talked about projecting out the rest of the season, and I had actually predicted the Indiana Hoosiers to go on a run at the end of the year and sneaking in, winning the Big Ten tournament, and sneaking into the tournament that way. They may not need the Big Ten tournament at this point with the way they've played as of late. They might at this point just be solidly in, but you and I've talked about this before on Locked On Illini, right? It's just one of those where Mike Woodson no longer is catering to what he needs to do to make players happy. All he's trying to do is win basketball games, and go figure, they're winning basketball games. So yeah, I think that's going to be a really good matchup against Ohio State.
It will. It will. I had a Mike Woodson, Brad Underwood comparison I was going to make earlier in the show, but I decided not to do it because you're
How
so
dare
happy
you?
tonight, and I didn't want to ruin your happiness. So uh, I had it written in my notes. I was like, if
We were
Illinois
doing so
loses
good,
this
JR.
game,
We were doing
huh?
so good.
We were. I do want to correct. I just ran the numbers for it. There's a nice, really awesome site called notnothing.net, and it runs like all the tiebreakers and everything for you. If Iowa wins tomorrow, it doesn't matter what happens with USC. USC is in. Iowa is also in because I forgot Nebraska is at 7-12 right now in the Big Ten. If Nebraska loses, they will not make the Big Ten tournament. Iowa will make it
Wow.
instead because of the head to head and round robin teams that they have faced together. So that game is actually very interesting. Fran McCaffrey could have another game if it does not work out for him. In fact, in the next segment, we're going to talk about three Big Ten coaches that I think are on the hot seat right now, or maybe they're not on the hot seat, but they've been mentioned on the hot seat, and I'm going to give my thoughts on each one. Sonny, any thoughts on Michigan State before we move on to the next segment?
I think Michigan needs this game. They're not going to win the Big Ten conference, obviously, but right now they're just rolling, and not in the good way. I think they need a big win. I think a big win against a rival. Whether the rival has anything to play for, it doesn't matter. I think right now Michigan just needs to remind itself what a victory feels like, because otherwise this may be a really short postseason for the Wolverines.
Yes, and Kent was asking about doesn't Northwestern play a role in that? They are 7-13 now as well. They are, so I think they make the tournament regardless. Yeah, so if they win, they're 8-12. They're in the tournament, but even if they lose to Maryland, yeah, they're above USC, so they're in the tournament regardless. Yeah, them, Minnesota, USC, Iowa, and Nebraska would all be 7-13, and it would be Nebraska that is the lowest of those five teams, which is just absolutely insane to think about. how much this Big Ten tournament bubble race has become. Nebraska should win that game. Nebraska should win, but Nebraska also should have beat Penn State, and
Yeah.
Nebraska also should have beat Minnesota. Well, they did beat one. Which one did they lose to? They beat Penn State. It was Northwestern. They were down by like 20 against. No, they lost to Penn State. Or they lost to Minnesota. They lost to
I,
one of them. Anyway,
I'm just thinking Illinois Purdue right now, JR. I can't help you out right now.
Drew Aller season says, should Mike Rhodes be fired? He's not on my three, and I would say no. I've not really addressed this too much just because of the injuries and stuff this season that Penn State has been through. I do think, I'm not going to knock any Penn State fans if they, think it's been a disappointing season. You started the season beating Purdue, and then, you're now second to last, and the Big Ten looks like you're going to be probably 5-15 if you lose to Wisconsin. You have no hope of making the Big Ten tournament. So I'm not going to be upset or say any Penn State fan is wrong if they want Mike Rhodes gone. But at the same time, I'm also like, they had injuries. Let's see what happens with bringing in his next class. And next year will probably be his prove it year to me. Probably needs to at least make the NCAA tournament or get close and be on the bubble, in my opinion. So
yeah, I mean, I think I jumped on the post game with you when Penn State beat Purdue, and I sat here for 5 minutes talking about it. I really like Mike Rhodes, and I really like. They're not there yet, but in just a matter of a couple seasons, I can see how good that they can be a team to be reckoned with, and it didn't quite work out that way.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Casual Big Ten Ken, he says, yikes, Nebraska. I did call that early on, though. Credit to me. If it happens, Ken, we'll see. But it is March. If you ask me, is Nebraska, UCLA, Maryland, and Wisconsin all going to win tomorrow? I'd say they should. But then my counter to that would also be, it's March. So something's going to happen, and we'll have some time tomorrow to talk about it all after the games are up. We'll be right here after that USC UCLA game.